Greetings, friends! Welcome back to the Film Alchemist podcast, the show where we look at movies we love, break them apart, to find out what gives them their magic. I'm your host, Josh Griffey. A quick intro before today's very special episode. So guys, if you enjoy the show, and we hope that you do, please take a second and leave us a rating and review, especially if you happen to find the show on Apple Podcast app. That helps us out enormously. We've seen a lot of you doing that lately, and it does have an effect. We appreciate that so much. I know it takes a couple seconds, but while you're listening here, right, to the glorious episode you're about to have in your ears, please take a second and do it. Again, thank you so much for those of you that have. You can find us on all your social media. Wherever you are, we are too. We would love to connect with you, talk to you. In that same vein, you can email the show, filmalchemistpod@gmail.com, with your ideas for movies you'd like to have covered, new, old themes, guest hosts, double features, anything like that. We are coming up every December. The show stuffs your stocking, as you know. So you can get in now. Let us know your listener submission pick for that. We'll pick about our top 8. We'll try to get as many done as we can. And we'll pick our favorite movies and cover whatever you guys want. So that's a good reason to email us, filmalchemistpod@gmail.com. Also, you can see our faces as well as hear our voices and some new content we're working on developing on our YouTube channel, Nerd Alchemist. All right, without further ado, guys, today's very special episode, one of my favorite movies of all time, Predator. That's right. Dylan, you son of a bitch, right? I could do that all day. We could all do the Arnold lines all day. I was on Twitter one day, and I was scrolling through, and I found this delightful article about Predator on Nightmare on Film Street, I believe. And so I contacted the author, Rachel Reeves, and she was such a delight to talk to in person. She works at a record store. She's very into music. She's very interesting on Twitter, and I reached out to her, and she was kind enough to come join me today. She also loves Predator. So we had a really fun time digging as deep as we could into the things that help make Predator this enduring classic, right? Because when I was young, it was just all the best stuff about 80s action movies, muscle guys, this most unbelievably cool monster just mixed together in this really perfect bouquet of awesomeness, right? Tremendously awesome. So again, Rachel Reeves, you can find her work at Nightmare on Film Street, Rue Morgue. She has some other things she does. She's a film composer, things like that. So if you check the show description notes, I will have all of the information on how you can find Rachel's work, because you definitely should be following her. She was fascinating to talk to. She was unbelievably kind, exceptionally funny, and again, we are so thankful she decided to spend time with us. So we are about to listen to me and Rachel's discussion on the movie Predator. Also, a little warning, guys, we are 1 week away from our Halloween extravaganza, right? So you'll have this episode, Wing Commander, wrapping up the BFF trilogy Thursday. Monday, an interview with filmmaker Ryan Kruger, who just directed Fried Berry. And then on October 1st, we are beginning our Halloween deep dive, a horror movie every single day of the month. We know it's a lot, but we get really excited this time of year. So hopefully you guys will enjoy doing that with us. Like Rachel, we have many other fantastic guests lined up for that. So be prepared. It's a lot of episodes, but it's also been a lot of fun. Almost as fun as talking to Rachel Reeves right now. So, yeah, I actually read a piece you had written about your love of Predator, and I was like, I would love to talk to Rachel about this film, and you were nice enough to say yes. So if you wouldn't mind, while we're getting started here, why Predator? Why do you love this movie so much?
To me, okay, all right, I don't even know where to start. So first off, growing up, my dad was super into action films, so yes. I watched a lot of action films growing up, anything with Stallone or Schwarzenegger, JCVD, like any of that. Like that's what I grew up on, a big portion of what I grew up on. And Predator is, of course, amongst the mix there. And it's just so great to me. Like, to me, it's one of the top tier. Like, I would say number one, but I think that Terminator 2 is probably better. But Predator is very close. Like, it's such a great action film for a lot of different reasons, which we can dive into whenever. But it embraces the genre, but also completely subverts it, and it's just so well executed that it's just, and it's also just awesome. Like, it's just awesome.
It is
so much
there
fun.
is a base level of badassness. I was watching it today, and I was just like, Jesus Christ! Like, they just don't have dudes like this anymore, right?
Yeah.
like I was just watching it, and it's funny because like I have the big memories of Predator, right? But some of the smaller ones had faded away. I forgot about the we're getting off the helicopter in our street clothes. I forgot about the one guy's in a suit. He's got his little polo. Jesse Ventura's dressed exactly how you assume Jesse Ventura would be dressed. And I was there's just them getting off the chopper is iconic and badass. And I've always been a sucker for the group film, right? I think it's if you're a kid who grew up playing D&D, you're like, that's the big muscle guy, that's the fast guy, and this movie does that exceptionally well. But there was something you mentioned, the subversion of this. I had forgotten how much that really means to this movie, right? And it really struck me today watching how much of the time these super muscle-bound examples of machismo are truly scared. And that is something you don't get in a lot of action movies of this era.
Yeah, they're scared and they're flailing. Here they're supposed to be this like elite squad, right? This elite squad that goes in and like does these rescues. And they're supposed to be the best at what they do. And yet they're struggling. They're struggling hard. Like no amount of muscles, no amount of weaponry is like helping them in the situation. Like they're getting picked off one by one. And that goes against what a lot of these general action films during this time period were doing. You look at something like, Rambo. Like, I love Rambo. Don't get me wrong. But, like, he always solves everything with, his brain, his guns, and his muscles. Right. But in Predator, like, it's not helping them. It's actually working against them a little bit.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And there was that scene that just, it was like a hammer blow to my face today, because it's one of those scenes that sometimes I think you miss the little scenes, and they might be there somewhere. But today it was the one where Shane Black's character is the first Marine who gets picked off, right? And he's dragged away, right? We see our kind of cloaked, shadowy monster that we haven't seen. And this is 42 minutes into the movie, which is also something I had somehow forgotten about the attack on the little village. Like, that did not exist in my mind. I've seen this movie 50 times. I thought we just went straight into Predator. But, so he gets dragged away, right? And the lady's sitting there stunned. And Arnold's questioning, like, what happened? And he goes, hey, did you find Hauser, whatever his name is? And his friend says, I don't know. And there is this look on Arnold's face of, oh, fuck. And to me, that is the thing that really jumped out at me in this movie. Because, like the one scene that's so iconic, right, is when Jesse Ventura gets blown away. His friend comes over, grabs that minigun, and is just mowing down the forest. All of his friends come, and they're all just firing and shooting rockets into the trees. And I was like, this is the classic, phallic thing with action movies, right? Big guns, big muscles, all this stuff. And it's just this impotent display. And the absolute dread that sets in on them is something that I had forgotten about that. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, no, totally. And you brought up the issue of, like, we don't even see Predator till a good way into the film. And that's another thing I love about it so much is just the general, like, pacing and the way that the story is executed. Because you only get little bits, and it's not, forced down your throat. There's not a lot of exposition in terms of, like, what the hell is actually going on.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, you've got them going to that village, and they slowly start realizing that there's something else going on, and you see little bits. First you get the heat imaging and the thermal imaging, or whatever that technical term for that is. and then you see, like, the image of his hand when he picks up the scorpion, and that's the first time you see, like, oh shit, like, they're like, that's not quite human,
right?
And then you get little bits of that as you go. You see him bleeding, and then finally you see, like, it glitch out, and you see his shape a little bit more, and it's just the way it's, like, spoon fed to you, I guess, a little bit. I mean that in, like, a little bit at a time, I guess. I think
a very small spoon,
But anyways, I think you know what I meant. Like, it's just like a slow evolution of how we get to finally figure out what Predator is. And I
Yeah.
think that's just so awesome because it also really shows like the confusion with this team of guys. Just like, what are we dealing with here?
Yeah. Well, especially coming after that raid, right? So you have these guys, and because what struck me is this movie does a brilliant inversion, right? About 2/3 of the way through. So these are the stealthy hunters, right? To these people, they are essentially the predators. They have better technology. They're way tougher. They're these almost invisible killing machines, right? And they take this village out like it's nothing, right? They're just slaughtering these guys. And there's that cool moment where it's the moral battle, right? Which is, it's clear that this was some kind of arms deal, and that was Arnold's thing, right? We're not assassins, we're a rescue team, right?
Yeah.
So this murderer with a moral compass in a way. And he realizes how thin that line is, right? That's what he says to himself so they can do what they do. But that is washed away. So then we're sitting there and it's like, are these people actually any better than the monster that's hunting them? Right? So it becomes a really fun inversion to be like, oh, this is what they're doing. And watching them become scared, right? And like when they say, this is the jungle coming alive. Because one of the really cool things they do in the movie is Billy just always staring at the trees.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And you're like, that must be the most hardcore job because you always think something's out there. This is the first time they're right.
Yeah. And yeah, Billy. Oh, man, that character, Billy. So, and the characters, too, like, they do such a great job. And I know that it was, from what I've read about the film and stuff, that it was really important that they each have their own really, like, identifiable characteristics.
Right.
So you got Billy, who's the tracker. You've got Hawkins with his it's the one part of the film I don't like, his awful jokes.
Oh, yeah. Right.
You've got Shane Black with these awful jokes, and I hate it, but like, whatever. That's like his shtick, right? And then you've got, Poncho. He's probably the least charismatic of the group, but whatever. And then, Blaine, Jesse Ventura, like, oh my God. Genius casting to me.
Classic.
He's got his whole personality, his sayings, his giant ass gun. I don't know what kind of gun that is. I don't know guns.
Yeah, they keep calling it a minigun, and I'm like, there's nothing fucking mini about that gun.
Yeah.
I don't know gun stuff, but I was like, you should call that the big fucking gun, whatever the phrasing is.
Yeah, just excessive. Just so excessive, and it's perfect. And then you've got Mac, and he's got like the shaving, right? He's constantly like shaving.
Yeah, and he was the one in the suit. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's just like very like serious and focused, and it's great. And then Dylan, of course, I love the dynamic between Dylan and Dutch, and how the betrayal of friendship that kind of goes on there, and also, if we're talking Dylan and Dutch, like that handshake that they do at the
iconic meme of our life. Yeah.
Like, it's right there that you're like, oh yeah, like this, like I know what I'm in for, like this is awesome.
Yeah. I don't want to assume anything, but I think every one of us that really loves Predator have definitely done that with a friend. You're like, what are they even doing? We're like trying to like, what were they doing there? Like, our muscles look huge.
Oh yeah. And then like the shift with Dylan that you see, at the beginning, he's like, you just have to accept it, like you're expendable, whatever. And then, all the way at the end, Dutch Arnold gets to throw it in his face and like, we're expendable, right? And he's just like, oh.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the weird moments in the film is Dylan getting this character moment where he's like, I'm back in it, and I'm a good guy now, right? When he says he'll go after the guy that took off, right? I forget his name, the shaving guy.
Oh, Mac, yeah.
Mac, he's like, I'll go get Mac, you go. And Arnold's like, there's no coming back from this. And he's just like, hold that damn chopper. And I was, in that moment, I was like, are we to believe that now that he's seen this alien up close, right? He saw it with his own eyes. Do you think that's an honest... He's like, man, I feel really bad about what I did now. That was one of the weird moments in the film where I like the idea of this samurai who lost his honor, right? Like, maybe I'll get it back moment. But it felt very weird for Dylan.
Yeah, it's just, he thought he had control over it. That was the whole thing. He was, talking big and, being that, macho guy up against his similarly macho friend. And, but it's like, you didn't have control. And I think that that's another really interesting thing about this being an action film is just the lack of control overall. You know, the second that they like descend into that jungle, they're literally in a whole other world.
Yeah.
And the jungle's a character all its own. And it's another great thing about the film too is the way it's shot in that jungle. Like, there's a lot of films that take place in forests and in jungles, but sometimes the scope and the size, you know, like it gets lost a little bit, or it comes off a bit like Hollywood.
Right.
But they really, I mean, they filmed this. I think they filmed it. Oh God, I thought it was in Mexico, but maybe I'm confusing it with Rambo. But anyways, I know that they shot it like in an actual jungle somewhere, and they did such a good job, and they really like show the scope and the size and the thickness of the brush, and I'm sure some of that was production design, but whatever. But they do a really good job of like making it feel like a whole other universe. And I think that there's a line in there somewhere where I think Blaine, Jesse Ventura, is saying something like, you know, something along the lines like how he's never seen anything like this, and like if you lose it here, like you're gone. Like you're done.
You're fucked, right? Well, that was like one of the like even Billy when he chops that vine and is just drinking from it.
Oh yeah,
it's just those kind of things that you don't imagine, right? And then you start pondering this like bigger like law of the jungle stuff, right?
Yeah.
And it's so funny because they're forced into this unwinnable, like, we'll take this trench that no one else should take. And it does feel a little down the rabbit hole at that point, right? Where, because then there's just so many moments in that part of the film I like, which is, you know, because you go from Jesse Ventura, you know, I don't got time to bleed. You know, like one of his classic, amazing, perfect lines.
So good.
Right?
So good.
Those guys immediately just being childlike afraid of what's happening. When they see that Shane Black has been pulled off and they see his guts and they can't figure it out, right? Billy can't find the tracks. And when Billy said, you know, because there's that point when Pancho's screaming at him, right? And he's like, you're not afraid of any man. And Billy just simply says, he's like, something's out there and it ain't no man and we're all dead.
Oh,
and
yeah.
When he says
admits,
that,
like, I'm afraid. He's like, he admits it. And I think that's that show of emotion. And you also get it when Jesse Ventura's character dies too. And Mac, like, they spend a lot of time with that. And I think that that's really important. And I think that it's different, and how that they handle that is like they really show. And he makes a comment later, like, he was my friend. Like, you know, that they've it's clear that they've worked together for a long time, this group. And it would be remiss on the filmmakers' part if they didn't really pay tribute to that, because it's like, you established this, like, you know, let them feel this loss, and they do. And it's awesome.
Well, right, and that's the other thing too, because you're even sitting there, right, like when Shane Black disappears, they're like, we got to find his body. And when Jesse Ventura dies, it's like, I don't know how much got shot out of his chest. I was like, that's a gigantic corpse to have to drag through this thick jungle. You're like, that's a lot of legwork. But like you said, it matters to them, right? And that is one of the, because so many of these movies, right, it's just running through, right? Like you can think of even Commando, like another Arnold movie. It's just literally him just bodies everywhere. But the thought that an action movie character actually is experiencing loss is really fun, because I think that's what this movie is really sneaky about, right? Because me and my friends are just like, it's the most fucking macho movie ever. Right?
Most, yeah.
Yeah, because it's like, I remember this joke my friend made at a bar, right? Because this guy we met at a bar, right? We're sitting there chatting. And he's like, yeah, I'm a musician. And we're like, oh, cool. Like, what does your band sound like? He's like, we're like AC/DC, but, you know, manlier.
Oh, God.
And my friend just said, so what is it? Just explosion sounds? And it's like, that's how I imagine Predator. And I forgot about this whole subtext of Arnold really is trying to take care of this woman, right, at a point. You know, the camaraderie of the brothers, even Dylan, they don't really turn on, which you think that he would have been expendable immediately.
Yeah.
And I think that extra middle part, right? Because your start is we're going in, it's super cool watching guys on a mission, they're blowing up the village. And then there's a really good break where we just sit in these guys' kind of existential crisis, right?
Oh, yeah. And you see them, like, making all those traps and stuff. And I love that scene, too, because it's totally just, like, they're shooting around their muscles. It's just awesome.
Yeah.
They're making sure like just to like frame up, the most like ridiculous like muscle shot that they can, and
Oh,
it's
for sure.
so great. And they're sweaty and they've taken off all their gear, and it's just tank tops, and they're setting all these like man-made traps and things because their guns aren't cutting it. For
Yeah.
all of their manpower, like it's not working. So they have to figure something else out. And yeah, that scene right there is just, it's so good.
It's so fun. Yeah, because it struck me it has almost this Where the Wild Things Are quality, right?
Oh yeah.
Like there's even that part when Mac's sitting up in the tree and he's like, "Hello, my friend, the moon." And he's like, he has like these monologues with the moon. And he's like, "I got to get me some revenge." And then he's like murdering that pig. I was like, this is what the adult version of Where the Wild Things Are. This is the fucking rumpus. And then they're like, now we got to set up all these things and everyone thinks we're dead.
Yeah.
But the booby traps, I don't know what it is. Because I was thinking there's a long history in this era of my life, right? When you had Home Alone and Nightmare on Elm Street. There's a rich tradition of booby trap movies that really work for me.
Right.
And there's something about this like, oh, they're getting ready. I don't know what it is about booby traps. I don't know if you've ever thought of that. But I was like, it makes the movie seem more important, right? Like this, they can't just go fight him. They got to booby trap him, right? It makes the bad guys seem cooler.
It always makes me think too, like, would I like know how to do that? And the answer is no.
Yes, I had that same thought.
Not know. Like, I feel like I would probably identify most with, Kevin McAllister when it comes to like booby trapping, just throwing some Legos and stuff on the floor. But like, I don't think I could have like handled an actual like, what they were doing. I was
like, at least Heather Langenkamp in Nightmare on Elm Street had to go to the library to get a book. You know what I mean? Like, these guys are just throwing down hardcore trap. I mean, I guess it's their job, but then I was like, how much time in ranger training or whatever these guys are, how much time do you do on the booby traps? Like, you're supposed to have guns and all this shit. Like, how often do they use these booby traps? Because it's an important part of this movie.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I have no idea.
But see, that's the other cool thing, too, that I love about this movie. And if I had one gripe in the movie, I was debating if it's a gripe. But I like the idea that they're reduced to booby traps, right? And then even the traps don't work. So we just keep getting more and more primal as it goes on, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because the Predator actually uses their booby traps against them in a great scene. And then the one thing in the movie I was really torn on, right, is I love Billy taking his last stand, right, where he's on the log and he has the ceremonial. There is a part of me that always wonders what that looks like, right? Like, I want him and the Predator to show down. I want the mask. I want the show of respect, right? Like a samurai duel. But then later when Dutch gets that moment, it works really, really well. But there's a part of me that's always wondered what happened to Billy on that log, right? Like, I wanted this epic showdown moment.
Yeah, I think the cool thing about that, and with Billy's character, I think it's him just like being like, all right, like, you win. Like, you are better at this than I am.
Yeah.
I think that there's a respect there, just kind of similarly to the way that, like, at the very end, when the Predator, when he takes his mask off and he faces Arnold one-on-one, like, and they're just fighting. Like, he's not using his weapons really during that, like, one moment, because it's almost a show of respect. Like, you're worthy of a fight. And I think in Billy's way, that was him just being like, you win. I'm not going to fight back. Like, there's no point.
Well, there's also a part of me that wondered, I was like, is the Predator just like a Billy cosplayer by the end of the movie? Is that why the Predator does what he does with Arnold? Because he takes his gun off, and when he pulls the mask off, I was like, is that what he thought Billy did? Is he think this is our tradition, right?
Oh.
Because at the end, what is he doing, right? He's talking like Billy to Arnold, which is so weird. Yeah, so I was like, is he think this is like a new warrior custom of our planet?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, right? So that tripped me out, because when he starts talking and, anytime, and laughing as Billy, you're like, oh, you're like, kill it with fire.
Yeah,
right? Like, that part to me was so much creepier than any of the, like, stalking and hunting. Because for the most part, when he kills someone, it's pretty fucking fast, right? But when he starts talking in their voices, because he does that to Mac, too. He says something to Mac, I think it's in Jesse Ventura's Blaine voice or whatever. And I was like, oh, that's like an extra level of fucking playing with your food that made me really uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah, he does that to Mac, he does that to Dylan. Yeah. It's a cool mind game that he's playing
Yeah,
with them,
right?
for sure.
Yeah, I was like, is that the equivalent of what those guys do with the duck sounds? Like,
Yeah, I guess so, right?
Is that what ducks think? They're just in the pond like, who the fuck is that guy? Like,
Oh my God, you're so right. See, I don't know anything about hunting.
I know nothing about hunting or guns.
You're right. That's like very similar. Oh God, I never thought about
Yeah,
this.
see, we are to ducks what predators are to us.
Yeah.
And if a duck beat me in a fight, I would also blow myself up. Like, it's over.
God damn it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't. That's the thing, because I'm with you. I think it's really cool the way Arnold, because that was the other fun inversion, is that by the end of the movie, Arnold is back to this position of power where he becomes the predator himself. Because that's probably my favorite little beat in the movie, is when he's covered in the mud and the predator rises out of the water, and it's fucking awesome. But now you see his equipment is failing him, right? And he even has that impotent firing into the woods moment when he's just shooting up into the trees.
Yeah.
And I like that idea that now Arnold, by going back to the mud, right, has arisen as this like primal golem who's going to fuck this thing up. It's really one of the cooler endings of a movie.
Totally. And it continues that cycle of just like giving you a little bit at a time. Mm-hmm. You know, like as Arnold's going along, we get a little bit of exposition from Anna, you know, the one female presence in the film.
Yeah.
But, you know, she tells a little bit about how like, oh yeah, there's this like story with my people and, you know, the demon who makes trophies out of man, you know, like we get a little bit there.
How about that?
Yeah, so
that's
cool.
A detail I forgot, because I was like, why do they keep coming right here?
Yeah.
Like, how often do these fucking predators come?
Every 100 years, I guess. And then,
yeah, because I felt like I learned that later, but she essentially said every year it gets hot.
Oh,
we know they're here, and I was like, fuck, the predators are probably here every year now. Like, it's just like the predators like heyday.
Yeah. But then when he figures out the mud, you know, that's like an accident. He doesn't even know what he's doing, mm-hmm. But that's how, you know, because he doesn't know that this guy's got thermal imaging.
Right.
And so just kind of the organic way he finds a weakness with him, I think is really cool. And just like puts those pieces together and then uses it against him. Yeah, I think that's...
Oh, yeah. Well, that leads up to that awesome moment, too, when they're... after Arnold has caught him in the final trap, right? And the rock fucking smashes him. Arnold puts down the rock, right? Almost as his own show of respect, right? Like, that wouldn't be a warrior's death. And he says, you know, what the hell are you? And the alien or predator says it back to him. Like, he looks at Arnold and he's like, what the fuck? I've been coming here for vacation for like 100 years. Like, what's happening? And I thought that was such a cool, because he has become something that the predator's never seen here, right? Like, he is this more primal version of himself. Like, he's been fucking up our best warriors on and off their species for presumably a long time. And Arnold somehow found this kind of arcane transformation, right? That is super. I mean, that moment, the predator talking again always is like chilling to me. But him repeating back to Arnold, what the hell are you? Because I feel like that's how our dads all watch the movie, right? It's like, oh, look at that boy. Like, look at the muscles. Like, it was weird because my dad was a Steven Seagal guy. I think it was like the little ponytail. My dad had like the mullet.
Oh.
It was so weird. But my dad was like a Mason Storm, you know, Seagal guy.
All right.
Yeah,
all right.
It was a strange, because, Arnold just made better movies. But so you had mentioned earlier a little bit about Anna being the only female character. I would imagine this was a very difficult on-set life for the only female character.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, right?
But what I do like about this, and this is another kind of different, a way that Predator is sort of a different action film. Mm-hmm. It is so masculine heavy, but, you know, we've got this woman there, but they never fall into any of those really bad traps that don't age well.
Yeah.
You know, they don't sexualize her in any way. Mm-hmm. They don't, I mean, there's no like flirting in between any of the characters. Like, she's respected.
Yeah.
I mean, she's a prisoner. Like, don't get me, like, they're treating her not super great. Don't get me wrong. But it has nothing to do with the fact that she's a woman.
Yeah.
It's more just like, we need to use you, and we need you to tell us what's going on.
They look at her like she's not even a human, right? So
but
even little things like she just is wearing clothes that you would wear if you were in a jungle, right? Like that's one of those things you would never see in this kind of movie normally. But I thought Anna ended up her turn, because I think the scene when Duke cuts her free is a really washed over moment, right, in this film, which is he just looks at her and he says, "We need everyone." Not like, hey, come over here, you can give me sticks. He's like, you are a human being like us, and we got to fucking fight. Yeah. It is a shockingly progressive decision, for this movie.
And he also notices that, like, the Predator's not coming after her because she doesn't have a weapon. Yeah. So she's not a threat, and it's not a fair, like, kill. It's not honorable in any ways. Like, how hard is it to hunt something that's not going to fight back? Right. And so he also picks up on that, because at one point she goes to grab a gun and he's like, no, like, don't. Like, you're safe as long as you, like, don't do that. Right. And that's another thing that kind of they drop in that tells us a little bit more about what the Predator is, but in a really clever and subtle way, too.
Yeah, and that's the cool thing, too, is I think that little extra veneer of Arnold's desperately wanting to be noble, because you get the feeling everyone else is just, they see the Predator as more of like that guy who's on the other side of like football practice. Like, oh, you think you're tough? I'll fuck you up, right? I think other characters are constantly like, I'll fuck you up, right? When Mac chases him into the woods, he's like, I'm gonna have me some fun, and he just keeps repeating it. And I was like, nothing about this seems very fun, right? Like, no. I don't know what you do when you're on your free time in your suit, but this would not be high on my list. But Arnold actually has this more, he's looking at it as I got to survive and get out of here, right? It is weird. He doesn't do the last stand until he cuts her out, and he's like, we're not going to make it to the chopper, right? Then he turns into like, now it's time. But he never has that. He has one scene in the movie, right, where he really is doing the like meathead thing. And that's when he lights the fire. And it's almost as if he thinks that's what the Predator wants, right? It still doesn't feel like that's a true to Arnold moment, right? It was kind of cool how Dutch is actually portrayed in this movie.
Yeah. I think, that's his last stand. Like, he could have gone with, her and what's his face, Poncho, and like run to the chopper, and like he could have just left, but he was, it does say, and it fits his role that like, nope, I'm going to stay, I'm going to finish this, and I'm just going to set it up, and this is it.
Yeah. Well, because he has that cool line. He's like, if it bleeds, we can kill it. And you get the idea that he does not believe that at a point in the movie. He's like, fuck. And I think it's that, again, it kind of has that Wonderland moment again, where he just keeps falling down waterfalls. Yeah. And when he hits the bottom of the earth, he's like, all right, he can't see me, I'll fight him, or I have to climb up all those hills again, and that'll suck. So he's like, I might as well fight to the death.
Yeah, totally. Might as well do this. Might as well try.
Well, it's go time. Now, I know something you write about a lot is music in movies, right?
Yes, I do. Yes.
This movie has an awesome score.
Yeah. So Alan Silvestri does the score for Predator. And I think it speaks a lot to the production in general, which maybe we can segue into after this. But yeah, so Alan Silvestri was up and coming at this time. He had worked on, he'd worked with Robert Zemeckis and stuff, so he was very in demand. And also John McTiernan at this time was kind of up and coming. And this is before, he's done Lethal Weapon and stuff. Wait, Lethal Weapon? Die Hard.
Die Hard.
I was like, I think I just mixed those up. But it's before he did all that. The only thing I think he's done at this point was Nomads, which I don't know if you've seen Nomads.
I have not seen Nomads.
But that movie's crazy. It's got Pierce Brosnan. It's so weird.
Really? I love Pierce Brosnan. I thought I had seen all
I'm
this.
I'm not going to say it's bad. I'm also not going to say it's good. It's just very strange.
One of those, eh?
Yeah. But he chose Alan Silvestri because I think he knew how important the score was going to have to be. And Alan Silvestri nailed it. You've got the whole theme at the beginning. You've got those like repetitive 6 notes where it's like dun 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 dun, which that's kind of Dutch's and like the men's sort of theme. But then you've also got the really primal like drumming, and that's kind of the predator and the jungle, and the way that they interact is just so good. And
Yeah.
Alan Silvestri overall, he's really great at really emotional scores and really supporting the emotional, undercurrent that's happening with the characters, which really helps a lot in Predator. I think it emphasizes and gives a humanity and takes away maybe a little bit of the cheese in some of the emotional scenes, but also like really amplifies the action scenes in such an awesome way.
Well, even that opening of the spaceship, right? It's this, like these big strings where you're like, something really bad. It's almost like nails on a chalkboard, but in a beautiful way, like a haunting, like, oh God, whatever's in that fucking ship. Because we don't see what's in that fucking ship for 40 minutes. And so, but right away, oh shit, something scary's happening. And then we just go into a military movie. It becomes this genre, like you said, that repetitive, da-da-da-da-da-da. That's just, we are military men marching to our job, right? That might as well have been the Seven Dwarves to me, right? We're marching off to get a job done. But you're like, yeah, but I heard those fucking strings. I know something really bad is out there.
The Dutch's theme, I like that motif. It's really, they're a synchronized group of men. They work in tandem, they work together, and that really supports that as well. That it feels very structured, and I think that's awesome. Also, you mentioned the strings at the beginning. That's a cool thing about Predator 2 is it's not just an action film. It's not just a horror film. It's not just a sci-fi film. It was. At this point in the 80s and the late 80s, it seems like a lot of these kind of films were really embracing like the blending of genres, which works so great in Predator's case because I'm a horror fan. I'm a huge horror fan. I'm a huge science fiction fan. I'm a huge action fan. So you smush all those together and like that's my jam. Yeah. So the fact that it's following in the footsteps of things like Alien and Terminator and like all those sorts of films that were really big at that time, like it's so great, and it starts it off that way. It feels very Alien-esque in the way that they kind of did that that part to me. But yeah, I guess that's...
Yeah, well, anytime you add those extra genres, right? Because I would argue the science fiction in this is minimal at most, right? We just know there's a creature from another world. But really, that could have been just the best sniper on the enemy side, right? But what it does is when we see a spaceship and hear the sounds and the Predator vision and all that's a really cool motif, right? Because it's just letting us know this is not right without showing us any. It's our own world shown back to us in a different way than we see it. And so that science fiction is just enough there to, add something a little different, right? And in this one, the way they did it is cool. They used the science fiction as the springboard to the horror of these men who spend their whole lives to become these cliche killing machines. I'm not afraid of any man, but they fucking are because it's not a man, right? So I think when you start blending those little things, I think some people are like, it's not enough this or this. When you just sprinkle it in, right, as long as it has that narrative value. And I think Predator is one of the best examples of that, for sure. I'm with you.
Oh, for sure. And the kills are gory.
Fucking awesome, yeah.
He's ripping out, spinal cords and skulls.
Dude. That haunted the shit out of me. With that scene when he's a kid and he rips it, I just remember like, oh my God. I knew at that point, I was like, this movie will be bonded in my DNA. Because I told you I had kind of a bad father that let me watch movies way too young, right? So I might have been like 5 or 6 when I saw this movie. And I just remember being like, oh my God, like every time I saw a tree, I was like, what the fuck? And they did this really cool crossover comic book with Batman too. So it's Batman versus the Predator, and there's a scene, I think he's somewhere you can see like Wayne Manor in the background, and there's just a Predator with his fucking spinal cords hanging from a tree. And I was like, even Batman's gonna get ripped. So like, my childhood was crumbling because of the Predator.
Oh, crazy. Yeah. The kills, and they're all different, and they're all brutal.
Yeah.
And
oh my God, the Mac one has to be the best though, right? Is that your favorite?
I don't know if it's my favorite.
Oh, when his head explodes like a water balloon on the fucking camera.
Brutal. I don't know if I have a favorite.
Beautiful.
But I think they've all got really cool things about them. And just the fact that they're all so different.
Yeah.
Even when they first get there and you see the bodies like skinned and hung from the tree, like that's a big shift in the film.
Yeah.
Like that's when all of a sudden it's like, wait, this isn't quite what we thought it was. Like that's when they realize that like there's some fucked up shit going on. Like, why are there 3 guys like us that are hanging from their feet completely skinned?
Yeah.
Like that's a big
Green Berets,
like,
nonetheless.
shift.
Yeah. Well, that's the one where it's like, hey, watch us kill 35 people and you won't blink an eye. But you skin one of those people and it's like, oh, that one body does more work than 50 just soldiers.
Yeah,
right?
there's like there's acceptable rules. You know, there's acceptable framework for like this is an acceptable kill. Like that's messed up.
That ain't all right.
Like it's just they're both messed up. Like you're just used to this versus that.
Yeah.
So
well, like literally they're like caw, just stab a guy in the throat and you don't even blink an eye. You're just like, no, all right. Like, shouldn't have been up there. Right? But you see a couple dangling guys. It's just, I think that's the other thing too, is it's such a cool image because the Predator in this movie, I think, is just unbelievable. Like one of the best monster creations in movie history, right? Because
for sure,
that idea of just showing us what we really are, right? Like even just peeling the skin, right? These were probably a lot like Dutch's team, as he said, right? You just peel them back. It's like it's just fucking meat. And they're just left there in this disrespectful manner. You know, it just lets you know how little he fucking cares. And then we cut up and he's got his trophies, his heads, you know, with like the rituals that he goes through in the movie, right? Even his little medical scene.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, everything they did with the Predator, it just made him so much more, right? Like when I was a kid, I was Team Predator over Team Aliens just because I thought the Predator was so much cooler.
And I think that speaks a lot to, I was talking about the production because originally there was like some other team working on the Predator and they designed the Predator and they came to the production team and said, here he is. And they were like, no, that's nope.
Well, you know who they had playing the Predator when they started, right?
Yeah. Oh, wait, no.
Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Oh my God, I love him so much too. But
I love him too, but also you're like, isn't that guy like 5'6"?
Too
like,
tiny,
yeah. But they have pictures you can see on set where he's sitting there and it looks like he's wearing like it looks like the Jar Jar Binks pictures. Like he's wearing like a weird hat and his face is out and I'm like, what is that thing? And they're like, that was the Predator.
Yeah. And so they fired that team and call up Stan Winston and say, we need a Predator. And of course, Stan Winston is just a boss and him and his team come up with the Predator. It's amazing. But I love the fact that they didn't settle. I love the fact that they had this image of what they wanted it to be, what they needed it to be, and they didn't settle. And I think that says a lot for this whole film. They didn't settle. They didn't settle with a shitty score. They didn't settle for just generic actors. They didn't settle for subpar cinematography. You know, they made sure that like all of the pieces were working together and all of those choices just line up so well and contribute overall, making this something that like, you know, there's a lot of action films and there's a lot that just, you know, they're out there and they're fine and whatever, but this keeps it in that top tier level. Just all those little choices that line up that contribute to this overall cohesive, just amazing film.
Oh yeah. It's there's just so many little things that are like, I remember I was reading some behind the scenes stuff and the actor Sonny Lindem, I think is how you say his name, who played Billy.
Oh,
at one point, they had to hire professional security, I believe, just to keep him away from people because he got so into it. He was scaring the shit out of everyone, and they thought he was going to kill a guy.
Yeah, he had like his own bodyguard to like keep an eye on him. Like, it's crazy. Some of the stuff about this movie, it's just bonkers, and it's so great.
I love that.
Just imagine like all of them like working out together, like before and after the shoot, to just like keep just super, you know, their muscles just super big.
Oh yeah, well it's like that opening in the helicopter, right? Where they've switched into their superhero costumes, right?
Yeah.
And Jesse Ventura, I thought the same, because he puts in his giant, you know, chew, and he spits on Dylan's shoes, and they're like leaning in, and I was like, that must be the only way these guys talk. It's just like, what'd you say to me? What'd you say to me?
Oh, yeah.
And also I was like, so Jesse Ventura also, he's on this mission with his friends. Like, that whole helicopter must just be covered in spit.
Gross,
like, my roommate in college was the weirdest guy because he was a chew tobacco guy. But he would drink Snapple. So I'd come in at night, and if you stumbled and drunk, there would be like 15 half-full Snapple bottles. And I'd always, And I was like, it took, like, watching Jesse Ventura took me back to my dorm room as my own flashback.
Oh God, no. Also, that helicopter scene, I think it's really funny because it seems very, it's like an Apocalypse Now nod.
Mm.
They've got the stereo going and, just like announcing they're like flying in over the jungle. Like, I don't know if that's exactly what it is, but I think that they probably knew what they were doing. And my guess is that that's an Apocalypse Now, like, nod.
An homage, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's the thing. That was another thing I'd forgotten. I didn't realize this was a South America mission. I guess I never really thought about where this was happening in my life, and I was like, oh, fuck, that's not that far.
Yeah.
That's pretty fucking scary. I know the Predators come to America now multiple times, at this day and age. But yeah, I just remember like, oh, my God. Like, we're doing, like, guerrilla missions not that far from home. But yeah, like, that was wild. We're just dropping guys like Arnold on other countries. That sucks. Like, we should be nicer. But yeah, it is one of those movies that is endlessly fascinating. I think you hit it best, right? It's just this, everywhere they could have made the choice, right? The standard action choice. It felt like they were very cognizant of that and just went a slightly different direction than you were expecting.
Yeah. It's so smart, and that's what I just really appreciate it. And but it's subtly smart. It has fun and it embraces what it is, but it also is just so clever and intelligent with the way that it plays with those expectations. Like, I think that there's just something just so great about seeing these pinnacles of machismo and masculinity. And like, yeah, they give you those shots. They give you those, framed up shots really up close with the flames in the back. Like, they give you what you want, but then they take you somewhere else. And I think that's just, I just think that's just so great. And then plus you've got this predator, this iconic creature that it looks amazing. And I like the sequels too. I think that they're
Predator 2 is the shit. I love Predator 2. It's such a good movie.
I even liked the one. I always confuse it because the naming conventions are so ridiculous. Not Predator. It's either Predators or the Predator. I think the Predator is the most recent one, but the one before
Predator
that
was the one with the Predator dogs, and then I think Predators is the one where they dropped us on the alien stock hunting world.
Yeah, with like Adrian Brody.
Yeah, that one actually had some cool ideas in it too.
That one I think is really great to pair with the original one because there's a lot of really cool through lines, which me being the nerd that I am, I love picking up on those Easter eggs. There's a creature in that one where it was the original design for the Predator, and they used that.
That's
in that
cool.
One. So it's it's funny. I see what they're doing there. And I don't know anything.
Well, I like that too because that one had that really fun hint that Topher Grace was added in the group. I thought that reveal was really cool. It had really cool ideas. I think the problem is if now that I'm thinking about it, I don't really remember a lot about that movie, right?
Yeah.
But it had some cool ideas. Yeah.
It's just, you're never going to be able to bottle up what Predator itself did.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard. And that's the thing with anything that's kind of the first of its kind in the way that it is. It was the first. I really don't think there's another film quite like Predator. The way that it combined all those things. Yeah, you can say Alien in some way, and you can say Terminator and stuff, but it's not quite the same thing. And repackaging, no matter how you repackage that, it's never going to compare to the original because it's already been done. So
yeah, it's weird. I would actually think of this movie. I think of this movie more as a samurai movie than another action movie, right? Because it is just these. By the end of the movie, it's just two guys standing there punching each other, right?
Yeah.
And there's no spectators. You don't get the idea that the whole world is on the line. It's just literally these two fucking things fighting to live. And I think that's what Predator does so well is it really just boils down to this level of we've all seen a tree or a shadow and been like, fuck, something in there wants to kill me.
Yeah.
And wonder if we have what it takes, right? Because the cool thing is Arnold learns not only that he has what it takes physically, right? But that he is deemed worthy by the shadow, that it will step out and face him as a worthy adversary rather than just doing the fucking 3 dots and exploding him, right?
Yeah, totally.
And that's something I think that is universally understandable, right?
Yeah.
It was funny you mentioned the muscle shots. And I was
Oh God,
laughing because
yeah.
my wife was watching this movie and she was just kind of like rolling her eyes at those scenes. And I
Oh
was like,
no.
but no, I was like, what? That doesn't do it for. I guess it doesn't. 'Cause she married me, and I certainly don't look like an Arnold. But I was like, what? That's in there for you. And she's like, don't lie to yourself. That shot is for you, right?
Oh,
Like
I agree
that
with
shot
you.
is not for the
I don't think
ladies.
it's like I do not enjoy it on any sort of like sexual level. Like it's more just like,
Yeah,
oh yeah, like it's so just over the top, and they're just
yeah.
like so sweaty all the time.
But
You
it
know,
just
so
made me laugh because I was like, fuck. So we had all the like gratuitous like female nudity, and then this nudity is also for us. It never dawned on me that way. But I was like,
yeah, no,
my
it
brother
is.
almost exclusively watches movies with really buff, wet guy scenes in them. Because
Yeah.
he's like, he's got a car and, weightlifting, woo! And like, I was like, oh, fuck, like, we get all the nudity. It's all for us.
Yeah, but I mean, what's new?
Yeah, right? We've had a good run, us
Yeah.
white men. We've had a good run of getting things the way we like them. But see, that's the funny thing. 'Cause I think those images are what everyone thinks of this movie, right?
Totally.
And I had totally forgotten how much fucking heart is in this movie. And to me, that is what separates it, right? Because even a movie like, let's say something like Bloodsport, right? It tries really hard. It's the same thing. Like, I'm going to be a combatant, this and that. You try a little romance. They have their gratuitous sex scene and this and that. But there's never anything you would mistake for a genuine bond or relationship, per se, in that movie. This one really, it does really affect you as a viewer when one of those guys gets killed.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you are truly, even Dylan to some extent, right? Maybe not, I'm not sad that he's died, but like the fact that he's still pulling the trigger after his arm is cut off.
Oh my God, that's so great.
It's
Yeah, I
such a
forgot
great
about that.
gag. But then you see the Predator's blade. I was like, oh, like, I didn't want him to go that bad, I guess. But, but you feel bad when everyone else dies.
Yeah.
Like, hearing Billy scream made me want to cry today.
Oh.
I know. I was just like, fuck, Billy, you fucking... Like, he did the thing. He stood there. He was noble like Arnold.
Yeah.
I like to imagine he got a very ceremonial death, too, and we just didn't watch it.
I think you're right, though. I think that they're, where like a film like Bloodsport, like as much as I love it, like don't
Love
get me
it.
wrong,
Fucking
like
love
it's
it.
almost a film built around the action scenes, right?
Yeah.
It's like they had JCVD, they had this story, based on a real guy or whatever, and they built the film around that.
Yeah.
And the care maybe with some of the dialogue and all that and the acting,
Yeah.
the talent, like maybe it wasn't quite there. But I feel like some of that stuff was secondary in Predator. Like, yes, it's an action film, but it wasn't built around that. Like, they had this really great story, and they took a lot of care with the dialogue and, like, took a lot of time cultivating and making us care about these characters. And the rest is just, like, icing on the cake.
They knew they had you with the action. They knew they had the monster, so they were able to play a little more. I'll blow your mind about Bloodsport, because last time I watched it, again, my wife, very observant. We're watching it, and I'm like, cool, fighting. I love the fights. Like, oh, monkey style guy, right? Oh, big fat guy who bear hugs people. And my wife just goes, why do they keep using the same cat sound? And I was like, excuse me? And so then I hear it, meow. And I was like, that's strange. Like, there are several B-roll cutaways to kittens. But if you watch those scenes, it's almost as if the editor, every 3 seconds, just played the same meow on a loop.
God.
So the next time you watch Bloodsport, listen for that kitten sound, and you'll be like, what the fuck were they thinking?
I'm never going to see it the same way again.
I told my wife, I was like, well, thanks for ruining that for me. But now it is actually something I look forward to. It's
That's
like
so
this
funny.
charming metronome between kicks.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, but I don't know. So in wrapping this up, right, if you could write a brief, like, quick love letter. Let's say someone skipped everything in the show. But they were like, what was Rachel's pitch? Like, why Predator still? Now that we've discussed it a little more, why do you think you'll keep coming back to this your whole life?
I will keep coming back to Predator because it's not just brawn, it's not just muscle, it's not just machismo. It embraces all of that thing, but it also does something more than that. And it's also got a killer monster to boot. Like, what more could you want? And it's fun, it's smart, it's well made, and it's action at its ultimate peak of everything. It's action turned up to 11.
Yes.
But done right.
Yeah.
And it's never going to lose that. They didn't. I see. It's so hard. I just love it so much.
I know. It is one of the weird things when you do like movie writing or podcasts. You're like, I have so much love. It reminded me of when someone described punk music, right? They're like, we have so much we want to say and so little talent to say it with.
Yeah.
And they're like, but it's not going to stop us, right? It's going to come out as this cacophony. And that's how I feel sometimes. You're like, God, I just want to write like the most eloquent love letter to what Predator meant to me.
There's a reason I'm a writer and not a publisher. Because I can edit.
You are a fantastic writer too. So, yeah, that's what I think is cool though, right? Is beneath all the, yes, it has an amazing monster. Like the scene when his blades come down around Arnold's neck. It just has like iconic moments like that buried everywhere, right?
Yeah.
It's one of the most wildly awesome quote movies ever, right? Even some great quotes that you'll remember that we no longer say out loud, right? Like, there's some things, but it's just so fun and so quotable. But I think what it is it's this, they use this a brilliant monster, like you said, kind of parsing it out to great effect, to where at the end it is literally just every person inside saying, how much am I willing to fight for this, right? It's that Wes Craven story when he smashed a rat with a brick. And he's like, even this rat, this useless rat, was dying and just screaming because it so desperately wanted to live. And that's what made him realize, oh, fuck, everything is just trying to fucking scrape for every extra second. And I think it's just cool. Any story that just says, here's a worthy person, and you really want to see them win. But they don't make the monster so cartoonishly villainous, right? That, I don't know, it really strikes such a better synchronicity, I would say, between all of its parts, like you're saying, right? Yeah. Like it really doesn't let any of the things you would think overwhelm this really cool premise.
Yeah. They give you what you want, but also they don't overstay their welcome. Like they give you plenty of monster shots. They give you plenty of action shots. They give you plenty of one-liners. They give all, the big names, screen time. They give you everything you want, but they don't overstay their welcome, and they also don't like underset. Like they don't underplay it either. Like they just, everything is just the right amount.
Perfectly balanced.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Thank you for talking Predator with us, Rachel. I really appreciate you making the time. I know everyone's busy. Would you like to tell everyone what you're working on and where they can find your stuff?
Sure. You can always find me over at Nightmare on Film Street. I've got a few recurring editorials over there, so you can find new stuff from me every month there. I also lurk about Rue Morgue and Film Cred from time to time, so there's some stuff there as well.
Mm-hmm. And did you say you're going to be in the new We Are Horror zine, right?
Yes. Yeah, there's
awesome.
A new edition of We Are Horror zine coming out at the end of the month, and I will be in that as well.
That's so awesome. Yeah, a friend of the show, Molly Henry, had an article in there.
Yes.
She's a fantastic writer, too. So, yeah, they're getting a lot of you talented people. I like that.
They're doing a really cool thing. I encourage everybody to check them out. They're really diversifying their voices and giving a lot of cool writers a platform to just talk about things that we're passionate about. And it's a really great thing. And the design and the articles and the caliber of everything they're doing is great. So yeah, definitely look them up and support them on Patreon if you can.
Yes, We Are Horror. You can find them there. Nightmare on Film Street, all the other good places. I'll have all of Rachel's info in the show details and notes so you guys can be sure to follow her. I know I do. And I'm really glad I've been reading your stuff. I was excited that you actually agreed to come on. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, anytime.
Yeah,
we'll talk action films anytime.
You'll have to come back for Predator 2 and Predators and Predatores, like all the different sequels.
If you ever want to dive into Charles Bronson, I'm your girl.
Oh my, you know what? I think there's a chance we may not have done a Charles Bronson movie yet.
Well,
in over 200 episodes, I'm ashamed to say.
my low-key 2020 goal is to watch every single Charles Bronson film. So I don't know why.
That is the best hashtag
like,
quarantine goals I've ever heard.
Yeah, so I'm working on that. He's got a lot of films, so it might be a
that was a busy guy.
22 goal, but
well, better late than never, right?
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you so much. We will see you guys later this week for Wing Commander as we wrap up our Freddie Prinze Jr., Matthew Lillard tandem movies. And be sure to check in next month, October. A new horror film every single day. 31 days in a row. I know it's a lot, but we are excited to do that journey with you guys. Thanks again. We'll see you soon.